The funeral home in Chicago was filled with the scent of fresh lilies and the hushed whispers of mourners. Rain drizzled outside, tapping gently against the windows, as if the heavens themselves were mourning her loss. The air was thick with grief, yet the man standing near the doorway felt like an outsider. Ryan Malik adjusted the cuffs of his tailored black suit, his expression unreadable. He had not seen Emily in over a decade, and now he never would again. The weight of that realization pressed against his chest, but he wasn't sure if it was sorrow or guilt. He had received the call 3 days ago, a curt message from an unfamiliar voice informing him that Emily Roberts had passed away and that he should attend her funeral if he had any decency left. The words had stung, but they weren't entirely untrue. As he stepped further inside, eyes turned toward him, some filled with curiosity, others with quiet resentment. He recognized very few faces. Emily's world had become a mystery to him after their separation. He had left Chicago and moved to New York to chase his ambitions, building a financial empire that made headlines. His name appeared in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, but it was absent from Emily's life. Now, standing among those who had loved her, he felt like a stranger in a place that had once been home. He glanced at the casket at the front of the room, surrounded by white roses. Emily looked peaceful, her auburn hair neatly arranged, her face serene in a way that made it hard to believe she was truly gone. For a fleeting moment, memories rushed back, her laughter echoing in their old apartment, the way she used to tease him about his obsession with work, the nights they spent dreaming of a future that never came to be. A sharp voice cut through his thoughts. "What are you doing here?" He turned to see Sarah, Emily's sister, her eyes red from crying but burning with anger as they locked onto his. "You have no right to be here, Ryan." He exhaled slowly, bracing himself. "I came to pay my respects," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I didn't know." "You didn't know because you never cared to find out," Sarah snapped, her voice trembling. "She was sick for months. She fought so hard, but you—" She stopped herself, shaking her head in disgust. "You don't deserve to stand here." Before he could respond, she walked away, leaving him standing in the weight of her words. A lump formed in his throat, but he swallowed it down. Maybe she was right. Maybe he didn't deserve to be here. As the service began, he sat in the back, watching as people shared stories of Emily's kindness, her resilience, her unwavering love for those around her. Each word felt like a dagger, reminding him of the woman he had walked away from. And then he noticed them. 2 boys no older than 10 sitting in the front row. Identical in every way, dark hair, solemn expressions, eyes that held a depth beyond their years. They sat quietly, their small hands clutching onto each other as if drawing strength. Ryan frowned, his mind racing. Who were they? The ceremony ended, and as people began to approach the casket one last time, Ryan remained seated, his gaze fixed on the boys. Something about them gnawed at him. He finally stood and made his way toward Sarah, who was speaking with an elderly woman near the entrance. "Sarah," he said cautiously. She turned, clearly reluctant to acknowledge him. "Who are those boys?" he asked, nodding toward them. Her expression shifted, tightening with something unreadable. "They're Emily's sons," she said simply. Ryan felt an unexpected jolt in his chest. Emily had children? But before he could process the thought, Sarah's next words nearly knocked the air out of his lungs. "They're yours." His pulse quickened. "What?" The room around him seemed to blur, voices fading into the background as the weight of her words settled in. "Emily never told you," Sarah said, her voice laced with both sadness and anger. "She wanted to, but you had already moved on with your perfect life, too busy to look back. By the time she found the courage, she realized you wouldn't care. So she raised them alone." Ryan's throat went dry. He turned toward the boys again, really looking at them this time. The resemblance was undeniable, the sharp jawline, the way their brows furrowed in quiet thought, the same way his did. His mind raced back to the last time he had seen Emily, over 10 years ago, when they had fought about his obsession with success, his unwillingness to start a family. He had walked away believing that love and responsibility were distractions he couldn't afford. But now, standing in a funeral home, he was staring at the consequences of that choice. One of the boys, as if sensing his gaze, turned to look at him. For a brief second, their eyes met, dark, questioning, filled with something that sent a shiver through Ryan's spine. The boy quickly looked away, whispering something to his brother. Ryan felt an overwhelming urge to step closer, to say something, but his feet remained rooted to the ground. "They don't know who you are," Sarah added, her voice softer now but no less firm. "And after what you did to their mother, maybe it's better they never do." The weight of her words crushed him. Regret, guilt, and something else, something deeper, swirled inside him. He had spent years building a fortune, believing that success would fill the void left by his past. But as he stood there, facing two boys who had no idea who he was, he realized just how much he had lost. Before he could say another word, the twins walked toward the exit, their small hands still gripping each other tightly. Ryan watched them go, his chest tightening with something unfamiliar. He had always believed he was in control of his life, but in that moment he had never felt more lost. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. The drive back to his hotel was a blur. Ryan gripped the steering wheel of his rented BMW, his mind trapped in a storm of emotions he couldn't name. The lights of downtown Chicago flickered past the windshield, but he barely noticed them. His entire world had just shifted in a way he hadn't thought possible. He had children. Twin boys. And he had never even known they existed. The thought made his chest tighten, his pulse racing in a way that had nothing to do with business meetings or high-stakes negotiations, the only things that had consumed his life for the past decade. This was something different. Something terrifying. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. He glanced at the screen, his assistant, Ryan Caldwell. A loyal employee, always efficient, always precise. Normally, he would have answered without hesitation, but right now, the last thing he needed was a reminder of the world he had built for himself. He let the call go to voicemail. His world wasn't just numbers and contracts anymore. Not after today. By the time he reached the hotel, he felt suffocated. The pristine, modern lobby, the polished marble floors, the quiet hum of expensive luxury, it all felt distant, unreal. He took the elevator to his suite and sank into the leather armchair by the window, staring out at the city. Chicago had been his home once, long before New York swallowed him whole. It was here that he had met Emily, here that they had built dreams together before he had torn them apart with his relentless ambition. And now she was gone, taking with her all the what-ifs, all the second chances. But she had left behind something. Or rather, someone. Two someones. He rubbed his temples, exhaling slowly. He needed answers. Emily had never reached out, never told him. Had she hated him that much? Had she believed he wouldn't care? The worst part was he couldn't even blame her. The man he had been back then, cold, driven, obsessed with success, would he have listened? Would he have dropped everything for two children he hadn't planned for? He didn't know. And that scared him. The next morning, he found himself parked outside a modest two-story house in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. Sarah's house. He wasn't sure what he was expecting, but as he sat in the car, staring at the front door, an unsettling feeling settled in his gut. He had spent years commanding boardrooms, negotiating billion-dollar deals, making ruthless decisions without flinching. And yet, knocking on this door felt like the hardest thing he had ever done. Before he could talk himself out of it, he stepped out of the car and made his way up the porch steps. The house was simple but well kept, with a small garden in the front, a child's bicycle leaning against the railing. He knocked twice, his pulse hammering in his ears. Footsteps approached, and then the door swung open. Sarah stood there, her expression unreadable. She didn't look surprised to see him. If anything, she looked resigned. "You're persistent," she said, crossing her arms. "I need to talk to you," Ryan said, keeping his voice steady. "Please." She studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Fine. But don't expect me to be nice." She stepped aside and he walked in, his eyes scanning the cozy living room. Framed pictures lined the walls, most of them of Emily and the boys. His boys. He swallowed hard. Sarah led him to the kitchen, gesturing for him to sit at the small wooden table. A coffee pot gurgled on the counter, filling the air with a familiar warmth that contrasted sharply with the tension between them. "You want coffee?" she asked, almost begrudgingly. He shook his head. "Just answers." She sat across from him, tapping her fingers against the table. "What do you want to know?" His mind swirled with 1,000 questions, but he settled on the one that mattered most. "Why didn't she tell me?" Sarah let out a bitter laugh. "You really don't know?" "I don't," he admitted. "And I need to." She sighed, rubbing her temple as if deciding where to begin. "You broke her, Ryan. When you left, she tried to be strong, but it destroyed her. She found out she was pregnant a few weeks later. She wanted to tell you, but every time she picked up the phone, she convinced herself you wouldn't care. That you were too busy building your empire to deal with something like them." He flinched at her words. She was scared, alone. But she never let it show. She worked 2 jobs, went through hell to make sure they had everything they needed. She was a damn good mother. And you? Sarah's eyes darkened. You were out there living your best life, with your tailored suits and your magazine covers, while she was struggling to pay for doctor visits. Ryan's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue to defend himself, but what could he say? He had abandoned Emily, maybe not intentionally, but the result had been the same. And now she was gone and he would never get the chance to make things right with her. But maybe, just maybe, he could make things right with them. "I want to meet them," he said finally. Sarah's expression turned icy. "No. Sarah, please." "No," she repeated, firmer this time. "You don't get to waltz in after 10 years and suddenly decide you want to be a father. They don't even know you exist. And I'm not about to let you confuse them just because you're feeling guilty." "It's not just guilt," he said, leaning forward. "I need to know them. They need to know where they came from." "They know where they came from," she snapped. "They came from Emily. And she was enough." He exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the table. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she cut in. "You left. You moved on. They moved on too. And I will not let you come in and mess that up." Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken words. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, frustration gnawing at him. "Please, Sarah," he said quieter this time. "Just once. Let me see them. If they don't want to know me after that, I'll walk away. But I need to try." She studied him carefully, her lips pressed into a tight line. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, with a sigh of defeat, she stood up. "They play soccer at Grant Park every Saturday morning," she muttered. "You can watch from a distance. But that's it." Ryan felt something in his chest loosen just a little. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Ryan had never felt this kind of anticipation before. He had closed multi-million-dollar deals, stood in rooms full of investors ready to rip him apart, and faced relentless media scrutiny, but nothing compared to the nervous energy twisting in his stomach as he parked near Grant Park. The soccer field stretched ahead of him, bathed in the soft morning light of Chicago. Parents stood on the sidelines, chatting amongst themselves, sipping coffee, cheering for their kids. It was a scene he had never been a part of, a world that had existed without him, one he had no idea how to enter. His grip tightened on the steering wheel as he scanned the field, looking for them. His sons. His throat felt dry just thinking about it. Then he saw them. Two identical boys, around 9 or 10 years old, sprinting across the field in matching jerseys, their faces lit with excitement. His heart pounded. He didn't need anyone to tell him who they were. He just knew. They were his. His blood. The reality of it hit him with an intensity he hadn't expected. Every move they made, every expression on their faces, it felt like looking at a part of himself he had never known existed. One of them, the taller of the two, had a sharp focus, maneuvering the ball with precision, while the other was more playful, laughing even as he ran. They were different yet connected. Team. A bond he had no part in creating. Ryan stayed back, his hands shoved into the pockets of his coat, watching from a distance as they played. He felt like an intruder, a ghost observing a life that should have included him but didn't. He caught sight of Sarah standing on the sidelines, her arms crossed, her eyes scanning the crowd until they locked onto him. She gave him a warning look as if to remind him of their deal. Watch from a distance, nothing more. He nodded slightly, though every fiber of his being wanted to walk onto that field and say something, anything. But what could he say? How did you introduce yourself to children who had no idea you existed? He stayed until the game ended. The boys ran off the field, breathless, their hair damp with sweat, their laughter echoing in the crisp morning air. They ran straight to Sarah, who knelt down to high-five them, ruffling their hair. Ryan felt an ache in his chest. That should have been him. He should have been here for every game, every scraped knee, every late-night homework session. But he wasn't. And now he didn't even know if he had the right to try. As the crowd thinned out, Sarah turned away with the boys, heading toward the parking lot. Ryan hesitated for a moment, then took a step forward. He didn't have a plan, just an overwhelming need to be closer. Before he could think it through, his foot hit a stray soccer ball rolling toward him. He stopped it with the side of his shoe, instinct taking over. And that's when it happened. One of the boys turned around, his eyes landing on Ryan. "Hey, can you kick that back?" Ryan froze. The boy had no idea who he was. He was just another man standing there, another stranger in the park. His chest tightened. He nudged the ball forward, watching as the boy picked it up and ran off without a second thought. No recognition. No questions. Just a passing moment. And yet, for Ryan, it was everything. He turned back toward his car, his mind racing. He had seen them. He had been close enough to hear their voices, to see their expressions up close. But was that enough? Could he really walk away now, knowing what he knew? That night he sat in his hotel room staring at his reflection in the mirror. He looked the same, expensive suit, sharp features, the image of success. But something was different. He felt different. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, breaking the silence. He picked it up, expecting another work email, but it wasn't. It was a message from Sarah. "We need to talk." His heart pounded as he stared at the screen. He didn't know if this was a good thing or a bad thing, but one thing was clear: this wasn't over. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Ryan sat in his hotel room, staring at the message on his phone. "We need to talk." His mind raced with possibilities. Was Sarah finally willing to let him in, or was she going to warn him to stay away? He had no idea what to expect. His hands tightened around the phone as he typed back a simple reply, "Where and when?" The response came almost immediately. "Tomorrow morning. The cafe on Michigan Avenue. 10 a.m. He took a deep breath and set the phone down, his fingers drumming against the table. Sleep didn't come easy that night. His thoughts kept circling back to the boys, their laughter, their energy, the way they had run to Sarah after the game. The way one of them had spoken to him, completely unaware of who he was. He had built a life of certainty, always knowing what came next. But now, for the first time, he felt completely lost. The next morning he arrived at the cafe a few minutes early. It was a small, quiet place, tucked between the towering buildings of downtown Chicago. He ordered a black coffee and found a table by the window, watching the city move around him. He felt out of place. Usually, his meetings were in boardrooms or high-end restaurants, places where people spoke in careful, calculated words. This was different. This was personal. And for once he had no control over the outcome. Sarah walked in at exactly 10 a.m. She looked tired, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, a worn-out sweatshirt covering her frame. She didn't look like the woman he had known years ago, the one who used to dress in elegant dresses, her laughter always filling the room. But life had changed her. He could see it in her eyes. She spotted him and walked over, sitting down without a word. For a few moments there was only silence. Then finally she spoke. "I don't know why you're here, Ryan." Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a quiet anger simmering beneath the surface. "You left. You didn't want this life. And now suddenly you do." He exhaled, rubbing his hands together. "I didn't know, Sarah. I swear to God I didn't know." She scoffed, shaking her head. "You didn't know because you didn't care enough to ask. I tried, Ryan. I tried to reach out. But you were too busy building your empire, living your perfect life." Guilt tightened around his chest. He wanted to argue, to tell her that she had no idea what he had been through, but he couldn't. Because she was right. He had been selfish. He had put his career above everything, believing that success would be enough. That money would fill whatever emptiness he had felt. But sitting here now he realized just how wrong he had been. "I made mistakes," he admitted. "I was young, stupid. But I swear to you, Sarah, if I had known about them, I never would have left." She studied him for a long moment, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. "They don't know who you are, Ryan. They have no idea you exist. I never wanted them to grow up with the pain of knowing their father chose not to be in their lives." He swallowed hard. The weight of her words pressed against him. "I want to know them," he said finally. "I want to be in their lives." She let out a slow breath, looking out the window. "I don't know if that's possible. They have a life, a routine. I can't just bring you in and expect them to understand." "I don't expect anything overnight," he said quickly. I just want a chance." She was silent for a long time, her gaze fixed on the street outside. Then finally she turned back to him. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. "But I won't let you hurt them, Ryan. If you walk in and out of their lives, I swear I will never forgive you." He nodded, his throat tight. "I won't," he promised. They sat there for a few more moments before Sarah finally stood up. "I have to go. Their next game is on Saturday. Same place. If you really want to do this, show up." He watched her leave, his heart pounding. This was his chance. Maybe his only chance. He had spent years chasing wealth, success, power. But for the first time in his life he had something real to fight for. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Saturday arrived with a crisp breeze sweeping through Chicago, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and the distant hum of city life. Ryan parked his car near Grant Park once again, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he took a deep breath. This time he wasn't here just to watch from a distance. He was here to take a step forward. He stepped out of the car, adjusting the collar of his jacket as he made his way toward the field where the boys' soccer match was already in progress. The sight of them running across the grass, lost in the game, made his chest tighten. They had no idea he was there, no idea he was watching every move they made with a mix of awe and regret. They were fast, skilled, and full of energy. His sons. The word still felt surreal. Sarah stood at the sidelines, her arms crossed, her eyes occasionally flicking toward him. There was no warmth in her gaze, only silent observation, as if she were measuring his every move. He understood why. He hadn't earned her trust, and in her mind, he had a lot to prove before she would allow him near the boys in any real way. He took a spot near the edge, blending into the crowd of parents cheering on their kids. His presence felt like an intrusion, like stepping into a story that had been written without him. But he was here now, and that had to mean something. The game ended with both boys grinning, sweaty, and high-fiving their teammates. They ran toward Sarah, their voices overlapping as they excitedly recounted different moments from the match. Ryan watched, his fingers curling into fists at his sides. He wanted to be part of those moments, to celebrate with them, to ruffle their hair, to be the father they deserved. But he knew he couldn't just walk up and introduce himself. It wasn't that simple. Sarah knelt down to talk to them, her hand resting on one of the boys' shoulders. Then, after a brief moment of hesitation, she looked up and locked eyes with Ryan. It was a silent signal. A test. His pulse pounded as he took a careful step forward, his heart hammering in his chest. The boys were still talking animatedly to their mother when Sarah straightened and cleared her throat. "Liam, Noah," she said gently, "this is an old friend of mine." Both boys turned to look at him, their identical faces filled with curiosity. Ryan's breath caught. This was it. His first moment with them. "Hey," he said, his voice coming out steadier than he felt. "You guys played an amazing game today." Liam, the more serious of the two, tilted his head slightly, studying him. "Do we know you?" Ryan forced a small smile. "No, we haven't met before. But your mom told me you're both really great soccer players." She wasn't wrong. Noah, the more outgoing of the two, grinned. "Did you see my goal? It was awesome." Ryan nodded. "I did. You have some serious skills." Noah beamed, clearly pleased with the praise. Liam, however, remained wary, his sharp eyes still analyzing Ryan in a way that made him uneasy. "If you're mom's friend, how come we've never seen you before?" Sarah stepped in before Ryan could respond. "It's been a long time," she said smoothly, placing a hand on Liam's back. "But he's in town for a bit, and I thought it would be nice for you to meet." The answer seemed to satisfy Noah, who was already more interested in gulping down water from his bottle. Liam, however, wasn't as easily distracted. He gave Ryan one last measuring look before finally shrugging and turning back to his mother. "Can we get ice cream?" Sarah smiled. "Sure, let's go." Ryan hesitated, knowing this was his cue to leave. But then, before he could step back, Noah turned to him again. "Wanna come?" His heart nearly stopped. Sarah stiffened slightly, but she didn't say anything. It was up to him. He glanced at her, searching for some kind of sign, and after a brief hesitation, she gave the smallest nod. He exhaled, relief and nervousness colliding inside him. "Yeah," he said, his voice careful. "I'd love to." The four of them walked together toward a small ice cream shop nearby. The boys talked the whole way, their energy never fading. Ryan mostly listened, soaking in every detail, their voices, their expressions, the way they moved. He had missed so much, but maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something real. He had a long way to go, but for the first time he felt like he was taking a step in the right direction. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. The small ice cream shop was filled with the sweet scent of vanilla and chocolate, the soft hum of the freezers blending with the chatter of families enjoying their treats. Ryan followed Sarah and the boys inside, his presence feeling both natural and out of place at the same time. He watched as Noah excitedly pressed his face against the glass, pointing at different flavors, his enthusiasm infectious. Liam, however, stood back, more reserved, his arms crossed as he scanned the menu board with quiet focus. Ryan could see the difference between them clearly. One wore his emotions openly, while the other kept his guarded, calculating everything before making a move. It was strangely familiar. It was like looking at a reflection of himself. Sarah helped them order, Noah choosing a bright blue cotton candy scoop, Liam opting for classic chocolate. When it was Ryan's turn, he hesitated for a moment before deciding on vanilla, something simple, something familiar. They found a table near the window, the afternoon sunlight streaming in, casting warm golden hues over everything. The boys sat across from him, their small hands gripping their spoons as they dug into their ice cream, completely at ease. Ryan, on the other hand, was anything but. His hands rested on his lap, his spoon untouched. He wasn't sure what to say, wasn't sure how to bridge the gap between them. Noah, as expected, was the first to speak. "So, if your mom's friend, where do you live?" he asked, licking his spoon clean. Ryan cleared his throat. "New York," he answered carefully. "But I travel a lot for work." Noah's eyes widened. "New York? Well, that's where Spider-Man lives." A small laugh escaped Ryan before he could stop it. "Yeah, I guess he does." Liam, still cautious, narrowed his eyes. "What kind of work do you do?" Ryan shifted slightly in his chair. "I run a business," he said, keeping it simple. "Mostly real estate and investments." Liam nodded slowly, as if filing away the information for later. He wasn't an easy one to impress. He was sharp. Too sharp for his age. Sarah sat quietly, watching the interaction unfold, her expression unreadable. Ryan wanted to ask her what she was thinking, but he knew this wasn't the time. Instead, he turned back to the boys. "So, soccer," he said, trying to steer the conversation into more comfortable territory. "You guys love it?" Noah nodded enthusiastically, his mouth full of ice cream. "Yeah. I want to go pro one day." Liam, ever the realist, shrugged. "It's fun. But you need backup plans." Ryan raised an eyebrow, impressed. "That's smart. What's your backup plan?" Liam poked at his ice cream with his spoon. "Maybe engineering. Or computers. I don't know yet." Ryan nodded, genuinely intrigued. "Those are great choices." For the first time, Liam looked at him with something other than skepticism. There was a flicker of curiosity there, as if he was trying to decide whether Ryan was worth knowing. It was a small step, but Ryan would take it. As the boys finished their ice cream, Noah suddenly looked up. "Are you coming to our next game?" The question caught Ryan off guard. He glanced at Sarah, who remained silent, her fingers tracing patterns on the table. She wasn't stopping him from answering. That was something. He turned back to Noah and nodded. "Yeah. If you want me there, I'll be there." Noah grinned, satisfied. Liam, however, remained quiet, watching him closely. Ryan didn't push. He knew trust wouldn't come easily, especially with Liam. But he had time. Or at least he hoped he did. They left the ice cream shop, stepping out into the late afternoon sun. The boys ran ahead, their laughter filling the air as they playfully shoved each other. Ryan walked beside Sarah, the silence between them heavy. He finally spoke, his voice low. "Thank you. For letting me have this time with them." Sarah let out a slow breath. "I don't know what I'm doing, Ryan. I don't know if this is a mistake." He looked at her, his expression serious. "It's not." She turned to face him, her eyes searching his. If you walk away again, it will break them." "I won't," he said firmly. "I swear, Sarah. I won't." She didn't respond right away, but after a long moment she gave a small nod. It wasn't trust, not yet. But it was a start. And for now that was enough. House was quiet, but not in an uncomfortable way. The boys were exhausted from their ice cream and the energy they had burned playing outside, their heads bobbing sleepily in the back seat. Sarah focused on the road, her fingers gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly, while Ryan sat beside her, deep in thought. The afternoon had gone better than he expected, but there was still a long way to go. He glanced at Sarah, noting the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened whenever she was lost in thought. He wanted to say something to reassure her, but he knew words meant little without action. As they pulled into the driveway, Sarah turned to him, her voice soft but firm. "I need to put them to bed. You should go." Ryan hesitated, wanting to argue, but he knew pushing her wouldn't help. He nodded. "All right. But I'll see you all at the game." She didn't respond, just gave him a look he couldn't quite decipher before turning away. He watched as she led the boys inside, their small figures disappearing through the front door. He stood there for a moment longer, taking in the sight of the house, the life he had missed out on, before finally walking back to his car. The drive back to his hotel in downtown Dallas was filled with memories. The past had never felt so close, so inescapable. He remembered the first time he met Sarah, how her laughter had been the only thing that could pull him out of his own head. She had been different from anyone he had known, unafraid to challenge him, unwilling to be impressed by his wealth or ambition. She had loved him for who he was before the millions, before the boardrooms and private jets. And he had thrown it all away. He pulled into the hotel parking lot and sat there for a long time, staring out at the city skyline. His phone buzzed on the dashboard, breaking him out of his thoughts. It was a message from an old friend, Mark, who lived in Dallas. "Mark, heard you're in town. Drinks." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. He wasn't in the mood for company, but maybe it was better than sitting alone, drowning in regrets. Ryan? Yeah. Where? 30 minutes later, he walked into a high-end bar near the Arts District, the dim lighting and soft jazz creating an atmosphere of quiet sophistication. Mark was already at the counter, a whiskey in hand, his sharp eyes watching as Ryan approached. "You look like hell," Mark said with a smirk. Ryan let out a dry chuckle. "Thanks. Needed that." Mark signaled for the bartender, ordering Ryan a drink. "So, what brings you back?" "Business." Ryan took a sip of his drink before responding. "No. Personal." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Didn't think you had personal reasons to be anywhere." Ryan exhaled slowly. "Turns out I do." Mark studied him for a moment before nodding. "This about Sarah?" Ryan looked up sharply. "You knew?" Mark leaned back in his chair. "Of course I knew. I was there when you walked away, remember?" He shook his head. "She deserved better, man." Ryan clenched his jaw. "I know." Mark sighed. "So what now? You trying to fix things?" "I don't know if I can fix anything," Ryan admitted. "But I can try." Mark swirled his drink, thinking. "You really want to make this right? Then don't run this time. No excuses. No business trips. No distractions. Just be there." Ryan nodded, letting the words sink in. The rest of the night passed with old memories, shared laughter, and a few more drinks. But even as he sat there, surrounded by the familiar comfort of an old friend, his mind was back at that small house, with two boys who had no idea what he was to them. When he finally returned to his hotel, it was late. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of everything pressing down on him. Tomorrow he would see them again. And this time he wouldn't let fear dictate his actions. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Ryan woke up to the sound of his phone vibrating on the nightstand. He groggily reached for it, squinting at the screen. A message from Sarah. His heart pounded as he unlocked the phone. It was short, simple, and yet carried more weight than anything she had said before. "Sarah, the boys' game is at 4 p.m. If you're coming, be on time." For a moment he just stared at the screen, rereading the words. This was the first time she had extended an invitation instead of just tolerating his presence. He knew it wasn't a sign of forgiveness, but it was something. He quickly typed back a response. "Ryan, I'll be there." He sat up in bed, running a hand over his face. His head was still slightly heavy from the drinks last night, but the weight in his chest was heavier. He had been given an opportunity and he couldn't afford to mess it up. The day passed in slow anticipation. He spent the morning in his hotel, going through emails and taking a few calls, but his mind wasn't on business. His assistant had called twice, reminding him of meetings he needed to attend back in New York, but for the first time in years he wasn't in a rush to leave. He had made a life out of running, but now for the first time he wanted to stay. By 3 p.m. he was on the road, heading toward the small community park in the suburbs of Dallas where the game was being held. The closer he got, the more nervous he felt. He had been in high-pressure negotiations, had faced down ruthless competitors in boardrooms, but nothing felt as terrifying as showing up to a little league game as a stranger to his own children. When he pulled into the parking lot, he spotted Sarah almost immediately. She was standing near the bleachers, talking to another parent. She looked different here, more at ease, more in her element. There was no trace of the woman who had once shared late-night takeout with him in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn. Time had changed her, but the way she carried herself, the quiet strength in her eyes, that was the same. He stepped out of the car, adjusting his jacket, suddenly feeling out of place among the casually dressed parents. As he walked toward her, she glanced up, her eyes meeting his. For a brief second, something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe? But it was gone just as quickly. "You made it," she said, her tone neutral. "I said I would," he replied. She nodded, then turned her attention back to the field where the kids were warming up. He followed her gaze, his breath catching when he spotted them. The twins. His sons. They were in matching uniforms, their small faces set with concentration as they practiced their throws. He felt something tighten in his chest. They looked so much like him, but there were pieces of Sarah in them too, the way they moved, the determination in their stance. He had missed so much. The game started, and for a while he just watched. The boys played with an energy that reminded him of himself at that age. They were good, really good. He could see the pride in Sarah's face every time they made a good play, the way she cheered them on without hesitation. He envied her for having been there for all of it, the first games, the scraped knees, the victories and losses. Midway through the game, one of the boys, Liam, hit the ball hard and made a run for first base. The crowd erupted into cheers, and before Ryan even realized what he was doing, he was clapping, caught up in the excitement. Sarah glanced at him, but instead of her usual guarded expression, there was something softer in her eyes. As the game progressed, he found himself cheering more, reacting to their plays, feeling something he hadn't felt in years: belonging. When the final inning ended and their team won, the boys ran toward the bleachers, beaming with pride. Liam spotted Ryan first, his expression shifting into one of curiosity. "You came?" Liam said, stopping a few feet away. Ryan nodded. "I wouldn't miss it." Ethan, the quieter of the two, studied him carefully. "Are you Mom's friend?" The question hit him harder than he expected. He glanced at Sarah, who was watching the interaction closely. He wanted to tell them the truth, but he also knew it wasn't his place. Not yet. "I'm an old friend," he finally said. Liam tilted his head. "Then why do you look like us?" Sarah stiffened beside him. Ryan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "That's a good question. Maybe one day I'll tell you." The boys exchanged a look before Liam shrugged. "Okay," he said simply, then grinned. "Did you see my hit?" Ryan smiled, relieved at the change in subject. "I did. That was amazing. You've got a great swing." Liam beamed. "Mom says I should keep practicing." "She's right," Ryan said. "You both played really well." Ethan, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "Are you coming to our next game?" The question caught him off guard. He glanced at Sarah, who was watching with an unreadable expression. "If you want me to," he said carefully. Ethan nodded. "Yeah. I think that'd be cool." Something inside Ryan shifted. This wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. A door that had been shut for years was finally cracking open, and for the first time he dared to hope that he might be able to step through it. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Ryan sat in his hotel room in Dallas, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with everything that had happened in the past few days. Meeting his sons, watching them play baseball, hearing them ask if he would come to their next game, it all felt surreal. He had spent years building his empire, convinced that wealth and success would be enough, but now for the first time he was beginning to realize what he had truly missed out on. The empty luxury of his penthouse in New York couldn't compare to the warmth of a child's laughter or the pride in their eyes when they accomplished something. He had thought money could fix everything, but now, standing at the edge of something real, he knew it wasn't that simple. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was his assistant, Josh. He hesitated before picking up. "Yeah," he said, his voice tired. "Sir, you have an important investor meeting scheduled for tomorrow in New York. Should I book your flight back?" Josh's tone was businesslike, efficient as always. Ryan exhaled, rubbing his temples. The old him wouldn't have hesitated. He would have been on the first flight back, making sure everything ran smoothly. But now he wasn't sure what mattered more, the millions at stake in that meeting or the little league game his sons wanted him to attend. He swallowed hard. "Reschedule it," he said finally. There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure? This deal is—" "I said reschedule it, Josh," Ryan cut in, his voice firmer this time. "Something more important has come up." He hung up before his assistant could argue further. The decision was made. He wasn't leaving Dallas. Not yet. The next morning he found himself outside Sarah's house again, this time with a different purpose. He hesitated before knocking, nerves twisting in his stomach. When she opened the door, she looked surprised to see him. "Ryan?" she asked, her brows knitting together. "What are you doing here?" He took a breath. "Can we talk?" She glanced behind her, then stepped onto the porch, crossing her arms. "About what?" "I want to be in their lives," he said, his voice steady. "Not just for a game or two, but really be there. I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I want to try." Sarah studied him for a long moment. "And what happens when New York calls? When your business needs you?" "I already told them I'm not leaving," he said. "I rescheduled a $1 million meeting just to be here. That has to count for something." She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "You can't just walk in and expect to fix everything overnight, Ryan. It doesn't work that way. They don't even know who you really are." "I know," he admitted. "And I'm not asking for everything at once. Just a chance. Let me start somewhere." Sarah looked away, her jaw tight. "It's not just about what you want. It's about them. They've been fine without you. They have a routine, a life that doesn't include a father who suddenly decides he wants to show up." "I get that," he said. "But what if they deserve to have both parents? What if I can give them more than just money?" She scoffed. "It was never about money, Ryan. It was about being there. About showing up when it mattered. "I'm here now," he said softly. "And I want to stay." There was another long silence before Sarah finally exhaled, her shoulders dropping slightly. "I don't know if I can trust you," she admitted. "But if you really mean it, if you're really staying, then prove it. Show up for them. Show up for real." Ryan nodded, determination settling in his chest. "I will." That evening when the boys came home from school, Sarah told them they were going out for dinner. She didn't mention that Ryan would be there. When they arrived at a small diner near the park, the boys' eyes widened in surprise when they saw him sitting at a booth, waiting. "You're here," Liam said, sliding into the seat across from him. Ryan smiled. "I told you I would be." Ethan sat beside his brother, still watching Ryan carefully. "Mom said you're her old friend," he said. "But you don't seem like just a friend." Ryan glanced at Sarah, who gave him a small nod. It was his choice now. He took a deep breath. "I'm more than that," he said, looking at both of them. "I'm your dad." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Liam's eyes widened and Ethan's mouth fell open slightly. "You're lying," Liam said, but there was doubt in his voice. "No," Ryan said gently. "I should have been here sooner, but I wasn't. And I regret that more than anything. But I want to be here now if you'll let me." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Why weren't you here before?" Ryan swallowed. "Because I made mistakes. I let my work take over my life. And I was afraid. Afraid that I wouldn't be a good father. But I see now that I miss so much. I don't want to miss any more." Liam was still quiet, his small fingers fidgeting with the napkin in front of him. Finally he looked up. "Are you staying?" "Yes," Ryan said without hesitation. "For as long as you'll have me." The boys exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. Then slowly Liam nodded. "Okay," he said. Ethan nodded too, though he still seemed uncertain. "But you have to prove it." Ryan smiled, his heart swelling. "I will." For the first time in his life he wasn't thinking about business deals or profits. He was thinking about the two boys sitting across from him, the second chance he had been given, and the future he was finally ready to embrace. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Ryan sat in the bleachers of the baseball field in Dallas, his eyes locked on the two young boys running across the field, their laughter echoing in the evening air. It had been a few weeks since he had revealed the truth to Liam and Ethan, and while their acceptance had been slow, it was happening. Every moment spent with them felt like a new opportunity, a chance to rewrite the past he had missed. The guilt still lingered, but it no longer paralyzed him. He had promised to show up, and for once in his life he was keeping that promise. Sarah stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching the game with cautious eyes. She was still wary of his presence, still skeptical that he would truly stay. He couldn't blame her. He had walked away before without looking back. But things were different now. He had stepped away from his company, letting his team handle the day-to-day operations, something he had never done before. His New York penthouse was collecting dust, his expensive suits left hanging in the closet. None of it mattered anymore. The boys mattered. Their lives, their happiness, their trust. Those were the things worth fighting for. As the game went on, Ryan found himself cheering louder than he had ever expected. When Liam hit the ball and made it to second base, he jumped up, clapping. Ethan, standing in the outfield, gave him a quick glance before focusing back on the game. There were moments when he could see hesitation in their eyes, moments where doubt still lingered, but he understood. He was a stranger trying to be their father, and trust was not built overnight. After the game, as the team gathered, Liam and Ethan walked toward him, sweaty and breathless. "Did you see that?" Liam asked, his eyes shining. "I almost made it to third." Ryan grinned. "You played great. Both of you." Ethan was quieter, but there was something in his expression that softened. "You cheered pretty loud," he muttered. "Of course I did," Ryan said. "I'm proud of you." Sarah approached then, her gaze shifting between them. "We're grabbing ice cream. You coming?" The offer was hesitant, as if she was still testing him. Ryan didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I'd love to." They walked to a nearby ice cream parlor, the boys arguing over flavors as Sarah and Ryan fell into step beside each other. There was a time when walking with her would have brought back nothing but guilt, but now it felt normal. "You're really staying, aren't you?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Yeah, I am." She sighed. "I want to believe you." "I know," he said. "And I'll keep proving it." Inside the shop, the boys grabbed their ice creams and they all settled at a table. Ryan watched them, the way they talked over each other, the way Ethan wiped ice cream off Liam's chin with an eye roll. They were close and he realized with a pang how much he had missed. But instead of drowning in regret, he focused on what he had now. Liam licked his ice cream then looked up. "So, you were really in New York all this time?" Ryan nodded. "Yeah. Running my business, working too much." Ethan tilted his head. "What do you do?" "I own a company," Ryan explained. "We build and invest in businesses." Liam's eyes widened. "So, you're like super rich?" Ryan chuckled. "Something like that." Ethan frowned. "Then why did Mom have to do everything alone?" The question hit harder than Ryan expected. He set his spoon down, meeting Ethan's gaze. "Because I made mistakes. I was young and scared and I thought I was doing the right thing by staying away. But I was wrong." Ethan studied him for a long moment. "Are you gonna leave again?" "No," Ryan said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere." Silence hung in the air before Ethan gave a small nod and went back to his ice cream. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Later that night, as they walked back to Sarah's house, Liam and Ethan ran ahead, racing each other. Sarah slowed her pace, glancing at Ryan. "They're letting you in," she said. "I know," he said quietly. "And I won't mess it up." She sighed. "It's not just them, you know. I have to learn to trust you again too." Ryan looked at her, at the woman who had raised their sons alone, who had sacrificed everything. "I know," he said. "And I'll prove it to you too." For the first time in years, he felt like he was where he was meant to be. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. The autumn air in Dallas was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves as Ryan stood outside Sarah's house, watching his sons through the living room window. Liam and Ethan were playing a video game, their laughter filling the space in a way that felt so natural, so right. It had been nearly a year since he had stepped into their lives, a stranger trying to claim the title of father, and now as he stood there, he realized just how much had changed. They were no longer hesitant around him, no longer guarded with their words. They called him Dad without thinking, argued with him about bedtime, and rolled their eyes when he embarrassed them in front of their friends. He had become part of their lives in a way he never thought possible. And yet, there was still one last thing he needed to do. Sarah opened the door before he could knock, her expression unreadable. "You're early," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "Wanted to talk to you before the boys came running," he admitted, rubbing his hands together. She raised an eyebrow but nodded, leading him into the kitchen. The smell of coffee lingered in the air, and for a moment, it felt like stepping into the past, back to the days before everything fell apart. But this time there was no resentment, no anger simmering beneath the surface. Sarah leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "What's on your mind?" Ryan exhaled, steadying himself. "I want to move back to Dallas permanently." Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't speak right away. He continued. "I've already put my penthouse in New York on the market. I've set up a new branch of my company here, so I won't have to travel as much. I want to be here for them. For you." Sarah's fingers tightened around her coffee mug, her gaze searching his face. "You mean that?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I lost too many years, Sarah. I don't want to lose any more." She let out a slow breath, nodding. "They'll be happy," she said. "And you?" he asked cautiously. She hesitated, then gave him a small smile. "It'll take time, but I think this is the right thing." Relief washed over him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. That evening, as they all sat down for dinner, Liam and Ethan were full of energy, talking over each other about school and their weekend plans. Ryan watched them, memorizing every detail, the way Liam gestured wildly with his hands, the way Ethan smirked whenever his brother said something ridiculous. These were the moments he had missed, the moments he had once believed he would never have. "Guess what?" Ryan said, setting his fork down. Liam paused mid-bite, eyes wide. "What?" "I'm moving here. For good." Silence hung for a beat before Ethan's face lit up. "Wait, really?" Ryan nodded. Liam nearly knocked over his drink. "That's awesome." Sarah chuckled, shaking her head. "Careful, you too." Ryan smiled, watching as the boys high-fived each other. This was it. This was home. Later that night, after the boys had gone to bed, Ryan and Sarah sat on the porch, the cool night air wrapping around them. "You really changed, you know," she said softly. He looked at her, at the woman who had been through so much because of him. "I had to," he admitted. "I had something worth changing for." She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Welcome home, Ryan." And for the first time in his life, he truly believed it. If you've liked this story, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends.